So my name is Becca Delaney Johnson. I was a first generation scholar at St. John Fisher back in 2010. I founded a company called The Cause Collaborative. We are a first of its kind social impact firm, women owned, obviously. And so I really just, I think it's a good fit for me to sort of storytell around how I built my business and my career based on the infrastructure Fisher gave me.
So my name is Miguel Melendez. Graduated from St. John Fisher in 2008. I'm currently the Chief Community Engagement Officer at Ibero-American Action League and also a Rochester City Council member.
My name is Abdul Hadi Homed. I am a first-generation student. I came here from Sudan in 2007, which seems like a long time ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
My name is Erin Berry. I am the director of the Institute for Civic and Community Engagement. Dr. DeJesus has really formed an impressive program that we are all really proud to be a part of.
Hopefully you've read that one chapter that I posted for you up on Blackboard. You know that the basic premise, Stanley Milgram decided to put this experiment together in the post-World War II era, okay? He began the experiment in 1961.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Rick DeJesus Roof, and currently I'm the academic director for the First Generation Scholars Program. I have been at the college since 1997, and I began as the Dean of Students, and I retired in 2017 as Vice President for Student Affairs and Diversity Initiatives. It is intended to be a program that will both support and encourage the students as they come into the college to look at themselves differently, to think of themselves in terms of their capacities and how they can develop themselves. And it's the self-development part, even more than the leadership, that I really focus on in terms of the work. But we use leadership as a way to think about how you develop yourself.
My mother didn't pass high school. My father didn't pass sixth grade. And my grandparents were both illiterate as well. They couldn't even read or write. So me being even in this level is, not just for me, but for my family, a really big step.
For me, my father dropped out of school when he was in the 7th grade. And he did it because he had to work the land in Puerto Rico with his family. So he always instilled the value of education in me.
I think there's a deep-seated belief that we have so much to offer our students and that our students have to offer community if we continue to invest in those students while they are here.
What a program like St. John Fisher's first generation program can do is really instill, community leaders at a young age. You may not know where you want to be in 10 years, but in my case, I'm 10 years later reflecting back on this is a piece of what created my story. St. John Fisher really instilled in me the fact that you could get out into the community during your college experience.
He didn't have to step into the role of faculty member, advisor, teammate. He really could have, sat up at the 10,000 foot level and sort of made sure that it happened, and he's always in the weeds, making sure that it is a transformative experience for all involved.
I was born in New York City a long time ago and far away. My parents did not go to college. My father, in fact, dropped out of high school at the age of 16, forged his older sister's birth certificate to make it look like his, and joined the United States Army. As I grew up, my family moved eventually to Philadelphia. I was very lucky. I was able to join a program for young Puerto Rican youth in the city to prepare them to go to college. It was called Aspira, which translates in English to aspire. And I was in that program for 2 years, and that's how I really got oriented towards going to college and thinking about college more seriously. And I did. I was fortunate. I was able to get into a college. I got a great scholarship that allowed me to be there. My sophomore year, I did a research paper, a 20-page research paper for a political science class. I earned a C. And I was embarrassed because I was thinking, geez, I should have done better than that. I thought I did better. The next semester, I was in a sociology class, and I had to write another 20-page research paper, and I was anxious. And a friend said, don't worry, my girlfriend's a senior in sociology. She'll help you. She took me to the library. She introduced me to the census abstracts. I didn't know what that was. And I'm reading through all of it and getting data, and I found out that of all the Puerto Rican students who had enrolled in high school in the fall, I think, of '67, only 30% were still enrolled in the fall of '70, which would have been senior year, 12th grade. And of that group, only 3% the following year, '71, were actually enrolled in college. And at some point I realized I was part of that 30% and I was part of that 3%. So that made me much more aware of the need for work on education and educational opportunity in my community. So that is what put me on the path to do the work that I've been doing, and I've been doing it for about 40 years now. I think what has most powerfully impacted the way I teach actually is my own training as a graduate student in counseling psychology, because actually my master's and my doctorate are both in counseling psychology, and the theory was that, you know, I'd get a license, I'd be a private practice, and that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in education, but I wanted the skills that psychologists often develop in terms of counseling.
Zimbardo went on to be on the faculty at Stanford University out in California, and he did the prison experiment. Is anybody familiar with the Stanford prison experiment?
There are lots of different ways to teach leadership and teach about leadership, but the one I chose is the one that was the most closely aligned with things that I learned about what helps people grow. There's a lot of human development theory that's embedded in how I teach and what I teach. The other thing is that I have a lifelong commitment, because of my own experiences, to issues of racial justice. And so I decided, you know, I looked and I did more research on my own and educated myself in terms of the history of the civil rights movement of the mid-20th century. Because there are a number of different persons involved in that who didn't necessarily see themselves as persons who had opportunities to move forward or didn't envision opportunities to move forward, and yet did.
Think about Rosa Parks. On December 1st, 1955, she refused to do what? Give up her seat, right? The bus driver, a guy named J.D. Blake, he calls for the police and he has her arrested. Rosa Parks asks him, "Why do you treat us so mean?" What was his answer? "I don't know, but it's the law. I don't know, but it's the law." Obeying the law is a good thing, right? Obeying the law is positive. Violating the law is a bad thing. It's negative. Or is it?
That movement changed the United States of America more than anything else during the 20th century.
This is the challenge that Pilgrim is examining. Saying, wait a minute, what's going on when we decide who and what we will obey, and when, and in what context?
I believe that when you look at the history of folks who've gone through the First Gen program, you'll find that they're out there doing something somewhere, whether it's in this community or someplace else, and they're having a meaningful impact. And I think that's a testament to the leadership development component that's part of this program, as well as the service component, because I think people want to find their way into impact once you go through a program like this.
I ask students to start thinking as freshmen. What's their plan? We call it a leadership action plan, but it's really, what's your plan to develop yourself? And then I ask students to rethink the plan as sophomores and as juniors and as seniors, because I want them to understand that, hey, you develop continuously over time, and that you can shape who you become. You can shape the opportunities for your future. You have a lot more power than you think, or than you've been led to believe.
What that means when people graduate and go on into their silos, I hate to call it that, wherever they work, whatever they do, they know who they are as people because of this program.
So my goal is to try and make sure that each first gen gets something that gives them a sense of their own capacity to do things that maybe they weren't sure that they could do, or that maybe they weren't sure how they could do it.
It puts a smile on my face, the impact that Dr. DeJesus did, and with the whole first generation scholarship and everybody that works in the scholarship. To be honest, my experience would not be the same if it wasn't for them.
In terms of individual students, what I hope is my legacy would be that they look at their opportunity to be first-generation scholars, their opportunity to be at St. John Fisher College, as something that invites them to think about how they're going to contribute to the next generation. Because I think right now, and maybe it's because I've reached that point in my life, I'm thinking generationally. I mean, look, I'm almost 70. I don't have that many more years, what, 20, 30 years at most, which sounds like a lot to you right now because you're young, but that's nothing. For me, a year goes by just like that. And what I'd like is I'd like the students to really feel like they have a role in preparing the next generation. So at the end of the day, despite all the challenges, despite all of the flaws, I still think that the way we're trying to make this country be a democratic, small d place where people can have a voice, but that people are informed and that they can make decisions and think about things with a certain set of values. Because I will be very candid, I do promote a certain set of values within the program. But I think they're values that are universal in a sense. They're not partisan values, they're values that are about human decency and human rights. And that doesn't matter. You can be conservative, you can be liberal, you can be progressive, you can be reactive, you can be whatever. But ideas about human dignity and human rights, those are what I would call eternal values. And I'm hoping that that's something that students pick up. And I think that's something that is particularly appropriate here because St. John Fisher College really speaks about its commitment to all students to trying to instill certain values. So I see myself operating in a way that's very consistent with what the college is trying to do.